They are perhaps the most innocent victims of January 6th. Shaye Moss and Ruby Freeman, the entirely innocent mother-daughter election worker team from Georgia, who so emotionally described what it was like to then become the targets of right-wing conspiracy theories spread by Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani and others. Today, news that might be enough to make your blood boil. Rudy Giuliani, a primary driver of those conspiracy theories about them, now concedes in a court filing that he and his lawyers will not challenge the fact that the statements he made about them, Moss and Freeman, which turned their lives upside down, sent them into hiding, were completely false. The court can take that for granted. You don't say. Moss and Freeman became favorite targets of the far right because of them and in the weeks following the 2020 election, after conservative media and online right-wing trolls zeroed in on surveillance video from Election Day that showed the two poll workers, mother and daughter, moving with boxes from under a table. Donald Trump, who lost Georgia by 11,779 votes, even played the video at a rally on December 5th. The next day, Ruby Freeman had to call 911. Listen to that.
I've been having terroristic threats. I've been having harassing phone calls and emails, and they came out and made a police report yesterday. And last night, about 10 minutes after 9, somebody was banging on the door, and now somebody's banging on the door again. Oh, they screaming. He's still banging on the door.
Okay.
He's still banging on the door. Lord Jesus, where's the police?
They are on the way, ma'am.
Oh, God.
Over the next few days, Freeman received hundreds of threats, racist, vile, violent threats. Her address was posted online. And to Rudy Giuliani, 5 days after Freeman called the police, Giuliani attacked her and her daughter in front of Georgia lawmakers.
Earlier in the day, of Ruby Freeman and Shaye Freeman Moss and one other gentleman, quite obviously surreptitiously passing around USB ports as if they're vials of heroin or cocaine. I mean, it's obvious to anyone who's a criminal investigator or prosecutor, they are engaged in surreptitious illegal activity, again, that day.
What was your mom actually handing you on that video?
A ginger mint.
It's obvious to anyone who is a criminal investigator. It was a ginger mint. Last month, Georgia's state election board dismissed its years-long investigation into fraud at that polling place, clearing Freeman and Moss of any and all wrongdoing. And now Giuliani concedes the statements he made about them were false in an attempt to shape how his current civil case proceeds. A real profile in courage. Joining us, Democratic Congresswoman, member of the January 6th Select Committee, Zoe Lofgren joins us. Also joining us, professor of law at the University of Utah, First Amendment scholar Ronnell Anderson-Jones. Congresswoman, it seems that protecting the democracy isn't a driver, but shielding oneself from civil legal exposure may be. Ronnell has a great legal analysis of what the Dominion lawsuit may have taught some of these conspiracy spreaders. But it appears that saying he knew these attacks on these human beings whose lives were forever changed were false was not something he did out of conscience, but out of a legal calculation.
Correct. I mean, he made these lives, the lives of these two poll workers just miserable. They were terrorized. Certainly, under New York Times versus Sullivan, they're not public figures. They were just poll workers. And he and the president, ex-president, really pulled them out of obscurity, lied about them, made them have to move out of their house and hide, all for a lie, for a political purpose. It's really disgusting. And I hope that Mr. Giuliani and ultimately the ex-president are held to account for what they did to these two women.
You know, they are, Congresswoman, two of the most memorable witnesses that the Select Committee sort of shared with the country. I mean, their descriptions of being, their words and yours, terrorized by Trump supporters because of the lies peddled by Trump and Rudy are some of the most searing impressions. And I would argue that the Trump supporter, Mr. Ayers, who also testified about the terrible things he did because he believed the lies, are also quite memorable. What are they owed? Sort of the innocent people, the fish's tail or the end of the tail. What are they owed as we near a point where we understand a target letter from Jack Smith has been sent to Donald Trump in the January 6th probe?
Well, they're owed justice. A lot of innocent people were harmed by ex-President Trump and Giuliani and the rest of his team. People who engaged in wrongdoing because they believed what Trump told them, or people who were completely innocent bystanders, like these two poll workers who really didn't do anything at all, but were victimized. They were victimized. So we need accountability in the justice system for those who engaged in behavior that really punished innocent people. There are civil avenues for redress as well, and I honestly hope that those who have been harmed have an opportunity to gain justice in the civil system as well. But of course, we're all waiting to see what the special prosecutor does. Ordinarily, I understand you don't have a target letter unless there is an indictment following. It doesn't always happen, but usually does. So we're waiting to see what happens there.